on an operating basis. That's been given to them in the form of loans. But on the other side of that cash that they're sitting on, that they're not lending, they have all of these liabilities on and off balance sheet that are virtually worthless. So if they took the money that they had in cash and they traded them off against the losses, they probably would still have more losses than they have capital. And so that's why they don't want to lend. But there's more money entering that system, and that system is circular in nature because the Treasury doesn't have enough money coming in to pay their bills, about $1 trillion right now, and that's going to get higher before the end of the fiscal year in September. And my guess is to probably go to $1.5 trillion. And so the Fed is creating money out of thin air. They're buying treasuries, both in the market and from the Treasury. And then they're buying this toxic waste. These are securitized mortgages, bonds, from the banks. And what they're paying them, we don't know because it's a secret. We have a private organization running our monetary policy that's a secret. You know, only in corporatist fascist government or communist government do we have such things. Anyway, the money that's going to the banks for those bonds is going over into treasuries. And so it's like a circle. And they're keeping the Treasury, which is the United States government, financially afloat because foreigners don't want to buy as much U.S. Treasuries as they did before. And we went through that with the BRIC people. And so they continue to create this massive amount of monetary fluidity. And if the banks were to lend that money, it would give a respite to the economy. But on the other hand, it would create massive inflation above and beyond the monetization inflation that's in the process of being created right now. So it could be a double whammy, like we might have 30% in inflation a year and a half from now, and then if the banks started lending, it could go to 50 to 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, what is going to be the impact, though, of the new power that the Federal Reserve is going to have? Why is the president turning over all this power to this private entity called the Federal Reserve Bank?
Because he's being told to. And he doesn't make any decisions. They're all made for him, just like his predecessor. And so I think Congress is going to balk on giving the Fed these powers. It's pretty obvious they were responsible for the situation that we're in because they didn't oversee what was going on. Well, of course they did. They were behind it. And they caused the problem. And what do you think there are? 258 sponsors in the House to Ron Paul's bill because congressmen are getting so much heat from their constituents that, look, these are the guys that caused this thing. You know, let's investigate them, and let's not give them any more powers than they already have as a private organization. This has got to stop.
Well, you know, Ron Paul is the one who's been behind this whole idea of promoting the auditing of the Federal Reserve or undoing the damage done by or just removing the Federal Reserve in the Fed. But, you know, there's a new movie coming out in July. And what is it called, Josh? This Bruno guy, what is his name? Sasha something or another, coming out with a new movie in which he entrapped, basically, Ron Paul into a room saying they were going to interview him, and then he pulls down his pants in front of Ron Paul. It seems to me that the timing of this new movie, I'm just saying it's probably coincidental, but the timing of this new movie to try and remove credibility from Ron Paul is just absolutely disgusting of what they're doing.
Well, it's not coincidence, believe me. There is no such thing as coincidence. This is being promulgated and created by the powers behind government. I mean, directors just don't go out and do those kind of movies. I mean, liberals and conservatives are both behind this movement to get rid of the Fed. So it's got to be the people who are running things who are financing this thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, the new power is being given to the Fed. It seems as though the Fed now can control, if they choose to, any business in the United States, or they will be every business will be under the control of the Fed, direct or indirect. Am I correct on that?
That's absolutely correct. It's a financial dictatorship is what it is. And, like Christopher Dodd stepped out and said, well, look, you haven't done such a hot job, and so maybe there should be controls on that. So the administration agreed to create a watchdog council to advise the Fed. Well, who are they going to do? What are they going to do? Go to Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Citigroup to get the people who are going to overlook the Fed when they in fact own the Fed? Give me a break.
Yeah.
I mean, the word has to get out that the Fed is privately owned by the major banks in the United States, and the major shareholders are bankers and bankers' families from both the United States and Europe. There are foreigners who own our monetary system in part, and that has got to end.
Well, I can actually hear periodically that Fox News will say, the privately owned Fed, under their breath. They'll say the Federal Reserve, privately owned bank, is now, and they're actually saying that. So I think that they can say, well, we did say that, and we did know it was a privately owned Federal Reserve bank, privately owned bank. But in reality, though, it is a farce to the American public. And 1 out of 1,000 people knows that it's a privately owned bank, or the implications of what it means that we have a privately owned bank in charge of all of our financial actions.
Joyce, this is the key. If we can get rid of the Fed, we have destroyed the nexus of their structure in the United States. This is the key, and it could be followed up by tariffs on goods and services. And we can do those two things, we can save America as we've known it. If not, you're either going to live on your knees or you're going to be in the streets fighting.
Yeah.
Because there's no other avenue left. And, us sheeple who have now become, because of those circumstances, with no place to go, we become rats in a corner. We either go off to an internment camp or we shoot it out.
Okay, I want to open up the phone lines, 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231, if you have a question or comment for Bob Chapman. I would like to ask you, now think about this. Picture yourself in a senatorial hearing room. They're having a hearing now on the Fed, on the financial problems in this country. You are asked to testify. What I would like to know from you is what 3 major points would you want to get across to those senators? Or what questions would you ask them if you were able to do so? What would be your point of contention with them or in explaining what's really going on in the financial problem of this country?
Well, I would explain to them that you can't have a private organization that has done worse than the U.S. Treasury did during the late 1880s running things. And the reason why is they're privy to all kinds of information that nobody else is, and they pass that information on to the people who own the Federal Reserve, which is the major banks, who happen to be brokerage houses as well. I mean, the first 2 quarters of this year, the earnings are going to come out shortly for Goldman Sachs. They have made more money in history than ever before, and they're going to pay it out in unbelievable bonuses. Well, we're sitting with 20.4% unemployment in this country. Now, someone's got to tell me that they didn't have inside information. Of course, they had to have. I spent 28 years on Wall Street. I know what you can do and what you can't do.
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Secondly, with that said, I think that they have to be convinced that the powers of the Federal Reserve, which is the monetary powers of America, which are setting interest rates and increasing or decreasing money and credit, they should go back to the U.S. Treasury. The entire Fed should be done away with. And for the same basic reasons. At least we'll have some transparency. Yes, there'll be political things going on within the Treasury Department. But a good deal of that can be done away with by passing rules that say only a certain percentage of people who work in the Treasury Department can come from banking and Wall Street.
Bingo.
It's like
That's
a revolving
excellent
door.
point. Yeah, excellent point.
And so that would be very, very important. And if we're going to have committees to help the Fed and advise it, or help the Treasury and advise it, let them come from Dallas and Los Angeles and Bismarck and Chicago and on and on. Well, let's get some choice.
What a concept.
Of excellent people from our country.
TheInternationalForecaster.com. We'll be right back with Bob Chapman. Stay tuned to the Power Hour. This is Joyce Riley.